We might be a meeting for Facebook Live. Cool. I think we are just about live. Yep, we are indeed live on the Books. We are here now. We are here with myself, Aaron Gabriel, Michael Murphy, and Paul Davis is actually Melissa. Is that what you said? Yes, and Melissa. Awesome. Amazing. Cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both for being here and excited to drop into this conversation. We'll have a few more trickle in. If you are watching the live now and you want to join, the Facebook event, Tipping the Corona Conversations, is posted in the group where this is being streamed to, and you can get the Zoom link there. And so we will begin. We got Robert coming in.
I know that they're all.
Yeah. Aloha, Robert. Hey, brother.
They're all in there.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Do we get to see your pretty face today, Robert?
Yes. Hello.
Cool. Yeah. So I guess I'll do a quick few minutes, really setting the context a little bit, grounding that in, and then we can move into some breath and laughter, and then do some introductions and dive into the conversation. So a bit of the context. Context is that myself, Michael, and Robert began. Other friends, I'm not sure if you read it, Melissa, but there's been a lot of us who've been diving deep into this book, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. It was a book written 20 years ago, but is really relevant to what we are experiencing now. Really looks at social epidemics and how they spread, through looking at just epidemics in general, looking at how viruses spread, whether that be a virus like HIV or the plague or coronavirus, looking at what the spread of virus is, looking at how epidemics come about, and also how that same pattern can apply to social epidemics. A certain product going viral, a certain idea going viral. What is it that allows for these epidemics to spread? And so that's what's sort of being looked at and explored within this book, The Tipping Point, and is what we're looking at here. And there's a lot of different concepts that we'll go into, that are very useful, I find, when we look at these social epidemics, especially as we come here together to begin to explore what it would take for a social epidemic that brings a new narrative to the earth to come about. Like, what is a new narrative that would allow for a new paradigm of living, and how can we understand social epidemics through these metaphors that Malcolm Gladwell is weaving to really be effective in crafting that message and spreading that. So that is a little bit of the context, just to really ground that in. We'll go a lot more into the different ideas that are really introduced in that book, and then just see kind of where it goes in discussion. And so from there, I'll pass it off to Michael. If you want to say anything, lead us in breath, anything there.
Thank you. I feel like you covered all of the key points that we've been kind of like coming together to talk about in the tipping point. So thank you for the beautiful introduction. And if we're all ready to do a little tuning in, drop in the breath. First, find the alignment of your spine and witness how you're sitting, making adjustments if needed. I like to imagine a string pulling from my crown up in the heavens. It reminds me to sit tall and fill my space. Feel the weight of your body against your chair or the floor. And from these 2 points, the top and the bottom of your being, bring your awareness to the center. located somewhere in the middle of your chest, your heart center. From here, drop deeply into your breath, allowing air in to fill your entire body, feeling it expand. Let the breath out to contract back down. Keeping your awareness at the center and being aware of the expansion and contraction of your entire body. All together, we're going to take 3 breaths, breathing in, letting it go. Breathing in once again. To release. Last deep breath in. And out. My body's feeling in resistance to it today, but I think that's silly. So we're going to go ahead and do one more deep breath in, and we're going to release in laughter and just laugh for a few moments. So breathing in and out to a giggle. Oh, one more deep breath to regulate our system. Sitting in silence for just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for the breath. Thank you for the laughter. Thank you all for coming together, for harmonizing, for really getting really present into this moment with this group, with this energy. And thank you for being here as we prepare to move into the next bit of our conversation. So I would love to move into some shares. Let's keep it under 3 minutes each, but just an opportunity to share, to presence yourself into the space. You can feel free to share a little bit about who you are, share about the tipping point, just really what this conversation means to you and what you are coming into this conversation with. So we can just go around, and like I said, 3 minutes. I'll keep track, and I'll just give you a little hand signal if you're like coming down to your last like 30 seconds. That way you can really be on point with timing, and there will be plenty more time to share later. So this is just a great way to presence ourselves into the space. So I'll begin. So my name is Aaron Gabriel. I'm currently residing in Tampa, Florida. I travel a lot. I'm connecting to a lot of different spaces within the tipping point metaphor, which we'll get into. I'm definitely a bit of a connector, connecting with a lot of different people, a lot of different groups. Tipping point was introduced to me recently, and I've been really enjoying it. So I'm really been enjoying the way it's helping to give me a clearer context for what's happening with Corona, and just understanding some of the things that are at play there. And I'm also really enjoying the wisdom and the insight that I'm harvesting from it around what it will take to bring about a tipping point for humanity in terms of a new narrative. So that's where a lot of my passion is at, is what will it take for humanity to start living in a new narrative, to move beyond our old paradigm of dominion over nature and to move into a new paradigm of living harmoniously and valuing all life. So I'm really passionate about that, very curious about what we can discover and learn. And especially right now, really curious about continuing to move clearly in terms of exploring what is that message that we can craft that is really, really inclusive, and it will be able to have that kind of contagious spread. So, yeah, that's me. That's where I'm at with the tipping point. A bit of what I'm doing in the world right now, amongst many other things, but that's what feels really good to share right now. And so we'll do popcorn style. So I will pop it over to Melissa. You can go next.
My name is Melissa Graham. I moved to Fayetteville, Arkansas from Austin, Texas. I don't have one bit of a connection here except through Michael and just my guidance system who really encouraged me to be here. I started a Sudbury school here in Fayetteville, and just briefly, it's about it's a democratic school that allows children to run the school with you. So we're in it together, and they're treated almost, they are like equals to me. And so I've been an educator my entire life, and I love children so much and want them to be treated like people. And the one thing I'm being guided to share is that, you know, we've been voting on whether we open this school because we're closed, obviously, online. We're running our school. So whether to open the school or keep it online. And we're right down the middle. We've got 7 votes for opening the school and 7 votes for keeping it online. And so I guess for me, I obviously need to pick up this book and be more aware. I'm just really interested in observing and listening and gaining any wisdom, because I feel like I am sort of navigating a ship of some type here with children on it. And I'm not, and I want to go the right way, the highest way. And I'm just happy to be here. Thank you. Popcorn style. I'll just say Michael.
Aloha. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Michael Murphy. I live in Bentonville, Arkansas. Going directly to the tipping point. This book was brought into my awareness a few weeks ago. I finished the book a few days ago, and it has been a really exciting piece to study through. It brought up a lot of past passions from when I was in college, and I did a lot of study and research and application of the field of memetics, studying how information spreads in a contagion method, contagion analogy. And going through the tipping point was really exciting to see that there's kind of expansion work that has been done on it. Also looking at how there is a point at which suddenly everybody has this new idea and worked into their lives. And the application of that into creating a new paradigm or a new narrative has been extremely exciting. It's something that I've been dreaming up for most of my life, of what would a new world look like when everybody could just get along. And I am starting to see that beneath all of the incremental changes that could happen, there are a few fundamental shifts that could necessitate all of those other things that my awareness really focuses in on. So if we find the seed from which to grow from that works for everybody and plant that seed, then we don't even really have to focus so much on all the incremental changes. And that feels so true and beautiful to me. And I am excited to continue to narrow down and find out what those commonality seeds are that we're all wishing to plant in our lives. Thank you. I'm going to call on Mandy.
Hello, my name is Mandy Yogi Mundi from Tampa, Florida, and I heard about the Tipping Point book when it first came out, and I was really interested in it. I'm listening to like listening to kind of that idea like way back when it came out. But I didn't get time to read it yet, but I'm gonna like speed read it and catch up. But I'm really interested in just to see how I can help. And I'm going to be hosting the next chat. So also I'm just really listening in and kind of seeing where to take this conversation next. So I'm really excited. I have a lot of ideas, but I really just want to let it unfold naturally. And so yeah, I just want to see how I can help. I have a lot of passions, a lot of areas, especially education too, because I was a school teacher for 6 years, and I really like the style that you mentioned, teaching, having the kids be autonomous and have it as a model for society, because like the school system we have now is well, kind of in a way it's a model for society, but I don't like that. So. Thank you.
Popcorn. You got Robert or Lexi. Who wants to unmute? Robert is unmuting himself. Perfect. He's trying at least.
Hello. I figured it out. My name is Robert, and I am from Earth. And I'm here because I love each of you very much. And I felt the invitation to bring my voice forward on this very important topic. We are approaching a tipping point, I feel, in the context of civilization redesign, where enough people are waking up to the realization that that's literally what we have to do next. And if we don't do that, then the entire way of life on this planet that we've all come to know is going to collapse and not return. And in this process of breaking down into the butterfly turning into goop in the chrysalis, we are turning into goop in the chrysalis of our quarantines. We're all in these little containers, my container, and this frame of reference that we're all within allows us to have a view into the world and to see what is available. We have infinite perspective of anything that we want to perceive, and then we can create that change. So this tipping point that's coming is like, oh wait, we can evolve, we can change, we can become new, we can create a new paradigm on Earth. And I feel very inspired to be a part of that, to participate and to be a leader in this existential revolution of consciousness. And based on the roles, it feels like Maven is the one that comes up for me, in that I've been gathering information from indigenous tribes and thought leaders for a while now, bringing them to the center. And in doing so, really getting this holistic view of what's going on and what do we need to do next. And what seems to be the important thing to do next is this: to have conversations, to talk about it. That way we're all on the same page. And when we have coherence, then we can move forward in a good way. And I think that's all I want to say for now. So thank you all for listening. Much love. And I'm going to popcorn it over to Lexi.
Hello, guys. So I'm Lexi, and I live in Conway, Arkansas. And I am here because the Corona conversations helped me transmute all of the emotions and things that I'm feeling that I can't quite figure out how to transmute into a physical form or into a shareable form. But with talking amongst you guys and feeling that oneness that we're all feeling, it helps me figure and navigate that out. And I want to learn how I can play a bigger part in this shift. And so that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you for coming. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for presenting yourself, for sharing. I appreciated, Robert, that you really tied that back into what your role is. I feel a lot of us are even starting to kind of tune into into that. Like I know Michael, for example, really identifies with the salesperson role. I feel like Lexi would as well. So from here, I'd love to, maybe just bring some cohesion of presencing some more of the concepts within the tipping point, so we can sort of continue to grow and crystallize that context within the group. Looks like we just had one more joining us. Lisa Marie is here now. Hey, Lisa Marie, aloha. Welcome to being here. Glad you made it. If you feel like saying hi to the group before we hop into the next one, we would love to hear from you. Okay.
Lauren.
If you are here, Lisa Marie, can you hear us? Cool. Not quite yet. So Lisa Marie, whenever you get your mic turned on, feel free to. Oh, you can. Okay, can you speak? I see your message in chat. We can see you there. Can't hear you yet. We cannot hear you. So if you want to introduce yourself, okay. Unable to speak. Perfect. Well, we're really glad you're here and are joining and are present with the conversation with us. And if at some point later you want to introduce yourself, then that's great. And super glad to have your beautiful listening presence. So again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for speaking, sort of sharing and presencing yourself into the room. It's really good to have you here together. And as I was saying, from here, I'd love to make present a few more of the core concepts of the tipping point to further ground in that context to enable us all to speak about it in a really good way. So there are a few, like 3 core rules, laws. I don't remember exactly the words, but there's the law of the few, the rule of stickiness, and the power of context, something like that. And what those say is the law of the few says that change comes not from a lot of individuals, like a huge amount, but from a few individuals who have very specific roles. Like a social epidemic doesn't come necessarily from a huge movement. I mean, it is that, but it's really sourced by a few specific individuals who are playing really powerful roles. Those are the ones who really make or break an epidemic. And those roles are called the maven, the social connector, the connector, and the salesperson. So we'll go more into those in a bit. The law of stickiness really says that for an epidemic to happen, for a message to spread, it has to be sticky. That's why like some things really, really stick. Like Sesame Street had this Big Bird character that was really sticky and like stayed in people's minds. And like Michael was talking about memetics and like memes, and some of those memes just really like stick. And then like all of a sudden you're just singing that song to yourself over and over again. So that's about the rule of stickiness. And the power of context is about understanding that our environment has a really big impact on us. Like what the environment, what's going on around us actually has a tremendous effect on how we receive, process, and move through information. So understanding the context really helps us to understand why some epidemics spread and why some don't. So few, stickiness, context. And let me go back, and another part of the tipping point is these 3 core ideas, which is that change happens not at once, but do you remember those 3, Michael? Like the one, change happens not at once, but in one dramatic moment. I'm drawing a blank on that. We'll come back to that, but we'll stay with those 3. So few, stickiness, and context. And so within the law of the few, it talks about who these really core players in an epidemic are. When there's like a social epidemic, like whether it's in marketing or whatever, but an idea that really spreads, there's the role of the connector, and the connector is super integral to an epidemic starting, because the connector is somebody who's connected in a lot of different spheres. They are like a big social influencer who know people in like, they're in like 6 different worlds, basically. Like maybe the world of academia and the world of festivals and the world of tech entrepreneurship and all of these different worlds.
a connector is connected in a lot of different spaces. And so because of that, they have a big reach. They have a big influence on a lot of people. The Maven is sort of a hub of information. The Maven is able to really look and understand what's going on in a specific space, such as you could have a Maven for humanity who's understanding all different humans, or you could have a Maven for car buying who's like looking deeply into the car market and understands what car buyers are looking for. And so we can see this in many different contexts. So the Maven is somebody who's really looking to understand a lot of what's happening in a given space, whatever. And because of that, they have a lot of information. And so you can always go to a Maven and they're like, yep, here's that information, here's that. They're just constantly giving and receiving information. So they're like a information, hub is the best word I like. And then the other one is salesperson. And salesperson is somebody who is able to really understand how people work and sort of make the sale to a person by understanding what that person wants and speaking a message into such a way that that person's able to really receive it. And for me, it's like, we could often think that salesperson is a very manipulative role, but I don't really see it as that. I see a salesperson as somebody who wants to bring value, and they want to understand that person to understand how to speak. The salesperson knows they have a value to give to that person. They know that what they have is worthwhile, and that person is going to benefit from receiving what they have. And so they want to understand that person and build that relationship so that they can communicate that and sort of make that sale. And so within an epidemic, we have the connectors, boom, boom, that's spreading that information in a lot of places. The salesperson being able to go one-on-one and really like make that sale, get that bridge crossed, very charismatic person who can cross that bridge. And then the Maven who's got the information, they're like really helping to curate and cultivate that message because they have a deep understanding of all of these different spheres and what's going on and how to really communicate. So that's a little bit of that. I'd like to pause there at that introduction of these three different roles, Maven, salesperson, connector, and see what's alive in the field from that. And if anybody has anything that's really coming up for them in there.
So I had a few things come up, mostly to words today. To adapt the concept of the law of the few directly to the new narrative model. I'm seeing Maven as somebody who is very well versed in social movements, in history of these types of systemic changes, and a good bit of philosophy as well, like deep into that area. Salespeople are the ones who can ask the questions that make individuals really look inward on themselves and see how they feel, and take the answers to those questions and steer them towards some kind of like common good. But allowing each person to find that on their own. And then the connectors are your classical connector in this situation, the ones who are just so deeply connected and can, as soon as the message is created by a Maven, refined by a salesperson, it can just start getting blasted out. And then the connector can connect people back to the salespeople or connect more connectors with salespeople. And that's kind of like the meta structure of moving an idea like this. And so what I was wanting to present is if you know anybody in your lives that hold those roles, we would love to talk to them. And also, if you see you have those superpowers too, I'd love to hear them voiced as well. Like I see myself as having a lot of the superpower, and the more that I'm looking into what really comes up in creating a new narrative, I'm starting to see some Mavenness as well. Of like, I've studied a lot of philosophy, a lot of asking these types of questions, and so I feel very comfortable as a sounding board to get closer to those kinds of like, the questions of what is the common good, what fundamental things can shift that can create a domino effect and completely flip our paradigm. I feel complete.
I feel I am, and I didn't feel like this way before, but now I'm really understanding what it means to be a salesperson because I sell essential oils and I've been working with that. And so I feel really connected to that role, connecting to people and communicating a message that's resonant with them. And I also like the Maven part. I'm really curious and interested in researching things and reading different books, and like to just pull in different knowledge, and also I want to help connect people. So definitely like helping. We can all just see like who we know and who can help, and just I think it'll just grow naturally. But I like this format structure, kind of having roles and parts and whatnot.
Would anybody else like to share sort of what roles they see themselves playing?
I can talk now.
Yay!
Yay! So when I'm listening to that, the first thing that comes up for me is, well, we're all of it, right? I mean, it's just a matter of like, what's the situation calling for in the moment? Because my background has taught me that sales is just another word for communication. And we're always selling each other on something, whether it be my child on why he's going to eat broccoli today, or you on why you're going to come to this Zoom webinar, right? And then when you bring up the word manipulation within the context of sales, there are two methods, shall we say, one being more effective than the other, and it's manipulation versus enrollment. And the difference is manipulation is getting someone to do what you want them to do for your reasons, whereas enrollment is getting someone to do what you want them to do for their reasons, right? And so the difference between someone who's really effective in the role of sales would be, yes, someone already said it about asking questions, right? Like, because there's that uncovering clues or uncovering what would be your reasons so that I can enroll you in whatever this concept or idea is, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, super solid. Yeah, understanding how we can bring value, focusing on what the person we're speaking to needs and how we can offer value to them, rather than assuming that we already know what they need and just trying to like force our idea.
Yes, absolutely, right? So like, and we could talk about this in a number of different contexts, right? We could go Toltec wisdom for agreements, right? Don't make assumptions. He says with this one agreement, your life will completely transform. How do you avoid making assumptions? You ask questions, right? And so from a corporate background, right, it's what we call value-based selling, asking those questions to determine what someone's values and or needs are so that we can make an offering, that's based on that, right? And then that's thus the enrollment process of, getting them to do what you want them to do for their reasons, right? As opposed to the reason why people sort of resist that word sales is because if you question further, almost every single person at some point in their life has had the experience of a quote unquote pushy salesperson. And so they come to identify the word sales with this experience, right? And then as a result, you'll hear people say, oh, I'm no good at sales. And I kind of giggle when I hear that, right? Because what I hear in that moment is I'm no good at communication, right? But again, it's all a matter of perception. So finding out what that original experience was and drilling down and asking deeper questions, you can sort of uncover that. And then, learn, because there's communication styles, right? And again, in the corporate world, we learned that there are typically 4 communication styles. The most common is referred to as controller, analyzer, promoter, supporter. So a master of communication is someone who can recognize what the communication style is and then speak to that, if that makes sense, right? And all of that wrapped into asking quality questions I had a mentor once say the quality of your life is based on the quality of the questions that you ask, right? And so asking those open-ended questions to find out what's important to people and being able to speak to that, that's everything.
Mhm. So I think you would probably agree that the role you probably resonate with, like, again, we all resonate with all of them, like we all have all of them, and I definitely agree and resonate with what you said. But would I be correct in assuming that, like, salespersons within those three, salesperson is one that you seem to probably have a natural tendency to want to contribute in?
I mean, again, that would be like, that's why I say I think it depends on what the situation calls for, because for me, I don't see them as separate, right? Like, I'm absolutely a connector. And I see myself potentially, as I said, selling all the time, even in the role of connector. And what was the other one? What was the third one? Maven. Yeah, I mean, I don't see them separate. I understand the concept, but just like with the communication styles, right? Or even 5 love languages. Well, now there's a 6th one, distance, right? And then when you talk about Toltec wisdom, the mastery of love, I think it's just being able to effortlessly flow into any role depending on what the situation calls for.
Totally. Yeah, I get that. And I just want a presence, like, for this conversation, what we're really doing, clear context of the metaphor in this book to give us a clear container for the way we're interacting. And yes, I find a lot of us resonate and, like, sort of identify with different parts. Like, I very much do the connecting. I very much have a network of a lot of people who trust me, where there's a lot of trust, and I'm connected to a lot of different spheres. But I'm learning how to really communicate a clear message that can really speak to somebody. And I'm continually learning what the information that's present and having those deeper dialogues to sort of understand. And so none of us is limited to any one, but within this metaphor, what we're exploring right now is how we can contribute within the context of what this book is speaking about.
Gotcha.
Cool. Would anybody else like to reflect on that? What they really feel resonant with it, or anything on that first part? Michael.
Just reflecting directly to Lisa from the share that you just, like, the information that you just shared, I would say that your role, as I'm seeing it filtered through these roles, you just presented yourself as a communication maven. You have a lot of different things that you're drawing from, a lot of information, and you're seeing the way that communication works at a fundamental level. So thank you for providing the information. I hear you.
Cool. Awesome. Anybody else in here before we shift on to another part of the book and just keep building the contexts and then bring it all back in? Robert.
Hello. I look into this a little bit with the Maven characteristics that I feel is a superpower of mine, and want to tap into the multidimensionality itself in this context, in that this is the type of thing that we can't do alone. This is the type of thing we need to do in community. We need to be able to rely on and trust in our fellow team members in order to know that they are going to do what is theirs to do. That way we are free to do what is ours to do. I fucking suck at sales. I am so glad that you literally exist, Michael, so that way you can do that. Aaron, I suck at maintaining connections when I'm not literally face to face with the person. So thank you for being. It is because both of you are here that I and everyone else, that I get to really step into the Maven and just focus on drawing information from the crowd, just listening deeply to what creator is saying, what nature is saying, what the stars are telling us, and then sharing that. So that way we can then collectively come together and decide what we're going to do with the information, who we're going to tell, who we're going to give the product or service that is this experience of coming together in community with other people. just so inspiring to me. It's like this unified collective consciousness that we're all tapping into, we're all evolving into, and I'm just so grateful that I get to be a part of it, and that I'm welcome to do so. Like I don't have to change, I don't have to be anything different than I already am. I can just show up as my authentic self, and that's enough. And being enough is so important to me because I don't want to have to change in a way that makes me more like someone else that is not like who I already am or who I want to be. I simply want to grow in my own way towards a better version of me without having to compare to anyone else's success or anyone else's definition of who they think I should be. And I feel like that's something that's really possible within this container. And perhaps that's another, transition that we can take in terms of what the tipping point talks about, in terms of letting go of the old way of things that have been, because not enough people are doing it anymore for it to make sense. And then adopting a new method because so many people are doing it that it just seems silly not for then everyone else to jump on board. It's like the ship is sinking and then this other boat that's perfectly fine right over here and there's a bunch of people on it. At some point, the people on the sinking boat are just like, yeah, fuck it. I was, not on the first raft. I wasn't on the second raft, but I'm going to get on this third raft because the ship is fucked and that one's actually doing quite well. And I'm happy to say that I feel like we're on the new ship. So good job, everyone. Ouch.
Amazing. Yeah, Lexi, go for it.
I wanted to chime in and piggyback off that because I feel like, I am the salesperson, like you mentioned earlier, and I have all these emotions and like thoughts, but don't necessarily, like I said, know how to transmute them. So coming to this conversation, I don't have to know all those things. I don't have to be a maven and I don't have to know everything, but I can come here and play my role, and I don't have anxiety. And I can't tell you guys, like, my anxiety's been so bad to where like I don't get on the Zoom calls and like show my face for like work calls, but I can hop on here no problem. And it's because I'm able to like just be. And so that's my reflection on that.
Yes, Melissa.
This is all just so extremely beautiful. I can't even handle it. And this part of me, as you're describing these things, and Robert, when he was speaking, and Lisa Marie, even, just this part of me was almost like, we're all kind of, I feel like for me, I'm under this rock. And as you're speaking, it's almost like this rock kind of moved, and I realized, I'm a salesperson. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah, and there was a thing coming to me in terms of looking specifically at these two roles of connector and salesperson, of like the connector is really here to spread the message, like take the message and like just like spread it. But what the salesperson does, and I'm thinking perhaps we can come up with a different word rather than this, like understand what that reference is and see if the like connector to me is a really nice word. Like connector really works. Salesperson still can invoke connotations that maybe don't totally resonate and click. But I like that we're all really getting what we're speaking at here. Because what that salesperson does within this metaphor is they bring the message to people outside of the core group. Like the connector, like got their core group and like, here's the message, everybody. But then there's a lot of people who aren't already in this. And what the salesperson has to be able to do is go and speak to other people who may not identify the different ways that we might identify, and to bring the message to them to like help them to understand.
Chime in. So I'm in sales. I do sales for a living, and instead of saying sales, we say educator. So instead of a salesman, they could be an educator, because they're really educating people and selling them on the message by educating them on how it could benefit them. So
interesting. Yeah, that's definitely potential in that. So the connector is spreading the message. The educator is helping people to understand the message. Because for a lot of people that we are connected to, that message is going to be shared and it's going to click right away. But then there's people who are further away from us, like some of our extended family or something. where that message doesn't totally click, and so somebody who can sort of help them to educate them, help them to understand that message. So I really like that. And also we have such a focus on education, so that's really potent. So we've got our connectors and our educators as two of the core roles. Really cool. Educator or facilitator, like they can either be they're educating them or they're facilitating them in understanding, something along those lines. Because educator, like salesperson, can still sometimes have the connotation of manipulation. Like, I'm gonna teach you this thing and you need to learn that, and because the old style education system was whack. So education is really good. I like educator or facilitator, but somebody who is helping the people who are outside of our sphere to understand what that message is. Cool. So then it's like Maven. What does a Maven do? If a Maven is, because the connector is sort of spreading the message, the educator is helping people outside to understand the message. And what's that Maven really doing? If it seems to me like they're really understanding it all to really craft that message in a way. So I'm curious what thoughts people have on that.
I can jump in. And yeah, I see that I presented this a little bit in my introduction, but I see the Maven working with the salesperson, giving the raw information. Yay, garden metaphors. But I see that the Maven is somebody who, based on historic events and their own like encyclopedic knowledge of how these types of social movements can work, or even what to look for, can present information to a salesperson who then can filter it into more of something that'll spread, and then the connector like fires it off. And so you have overlap with the connector and the salesperson, you have overlap between the salesperson and the Maven, and even in the connector, like maybe the Maven can feel more information on like what type of people a connector needs to work. So they're all interdependent, they all support each other, and a lot of the roles do overlap. But I see the Maven is really important in getting that information down to its most simple point. And so in the conversations we've had so far over the past 2 or so weeks, finding the common threads in all humanity that would seed a new narrative, and honoring all life is one that's come up several times. I love the thought that truth is inclusive, about allowing those who hold to belief systems to evaluate their belief systems. Because if you can understand that truth is inclusive, that suddenly puts into perspective a lot of beliefs that exclude other things, and then has a domino effect from there. And yeah, and all of these came from kind of like a Maven in a way, like in some direction, like some point. So I see Mavens, anybody who can really get down to what are the core philosophies, the core commonalities that all people can resonate with and share. And from there, that is the new paradigm, is if those are held as core values rather than the existing paradigm is individual success, individuality, and we shift to interdependence. That's a key piece there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I had a thought come through with these three. If it's okay, here's this message, and we have to be able to speak the message, we have to be able to spread the message. So the Maven is sort of responsible for curating that message. Maybe it's like I was gonna say creator, but that still has like a connotation of like control or individualism, but it's like sort of curating. Perhaps that Maven is like the curator, is like curating it. And then the salesperson is, like Lisa Marie said, like communications. They're the communicator, and then the connector is spreading. So again, that's just my love for alliteration, but I just wanted to like drop those possibilities, like the curator, the communicator, and the connector as roles. I'm getting some thumbs up, and I'm seeing deep thought from Michael.
Well, the thought was I just came back in. I attended a channeling session 2 weeks ago, and it was a week ago. And this person was contacting extra dimensional, extraterrestrial beings. And I asked a question of if there were to be an idea that could shift the paradigm, how would it best be packaged, or what are ways to package it? And they came back and said something with an audio visual component that's also very colorful. And so like I thought that was just the silliest thing, but like something like a kid's book almost that could spread this message as like a vector. And then using that as an analogy, so the maven would be the person who is writing the book and checks in with their sales team to make sure that it's got all the components that it needs. And then it spreads out. The connector is actually a distributor.
I don't think the maven is necessarily the one who's writing the book. What I'm seeing, the maven who is like curating what the core message is. Like the core message is like peace, love, unity, is valuing life, is togetherness, is truth is inclusive. Like the maven is curating what the essence of this message is, and the communicator, the salesperson, is communicating it in different ways. So a communicator writes a book, a communicator writes a song, creates a visual, does all of the communicators are making all of the different sales pitches and like doing it. And then the connector is taking those and being like, hey, everybody, here's this book. Hey, everyone, here's this. And every one of these books, every one of these videos, every one of these songs, all of these things all have embedded in them that core message that, and the maven, the curator, is responsible for making sure that that message is intact in every one of these shares.
Thank you for that clarity. That just opened up a lot. I hadn't thought of the salespeople as being their own independent individual creators. So we feed that message into all of these different beautiful creator artists, whatever you have you communicators. And then that's where
is a communicator, is like Nako Bear, for example. Even if his message is not quite the OG message, it can shift, and like we can bring that original message in there. Trevor Hall, all these ones, it's like they all have a message, and they're all sharing a teaching in their own way. And if we connect to all the musicians in Tribe and be like, hey, your message, let's just shift that a little bit so that it includes everybody. Let's just shift that a little bit so it includes everyone. That's like sort of what we're doing, is we're curating all of the message that's embedded in all of this, so that every musician in our tribe, because we're all connected to so many musicians, is selling that message, is communicating that message so that everyone can receive it. Melissa.
Thanks for all of this. I'm thinking about children, and I'm thinking about the maven in relationship with children, and how cultivating keeps coming to me. Like, like when you're connecting, or when you're in the presence of a child, and you're cultivating some of that information, and then reflecting back to them, which would be the communicator. Just kind of reflecting back what's been cultivated. And then that's all I got right there. Just those two parts about within, my world of, I guess this is coming from the children's book, and how wonderful it would be if the maven who would be cultivating this information would be able to be with these children, who it would be a book for them, apparently. And so maybe cultivating something, some kind of truth that keeps coming from them, and then the communicator who might be, wording it, or rewording it or something, might be the reflecting back to them more truth. That's all I got. Sorry. I'm sorry it came out a little jumbled. I should have taken a breath.
Mm-hmm. So if I followed you right, you're saying that the communicator is like reflecting back with the maven to ensure that the truth is clear in their message. Is that the core what you're saying?
Well, it's almost like as I'm hearing you all talking about the connector, it's almost like, if I'm connecting with people, I'm really just reflecting back to them the beauty of who they are. You know, it's like not even anything new. It's just I'm connecting with you, which I'm reflecting back to you. So I see them as like the reflectors almost.
Interesting. Cool. Anybody else have any thoughts in that space?
I see as like the Mavens are like just really knowledgeable in their many different areas, but you see how like they all three roles will be checking in with each other. They can gathering information, providing it in the salesperson or the communicator or the educator. So be crafting that message, making it easily reachable to many people or to different people, and the connector is like amplifying that and going to the different avenues of making connections. But also, you know, when the salesperson, if they change it, the wording, the Maven wants to still be listening in to make sure that no important information was lost or that they're saying what needs to be said. So it's important for them all to relate to each other. And even the communicator, where is the message going? How is it going? You know.
Yeah. Cool. And I got most of what you're saying. Your connection was a little bloopy, so I apologize if I missed any of it. But I feel there was really good stuff in there. And what I'm coming into now is almost this idea of not even so much roles, but like steps in the process. Like, because it kind of acknowledges that we're all doing. And so it's
is
like,
the internet not off? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted.
So it's like, what are the steps? The steps are like cultivate the message. Like, what is that message? Cultivate it. Communicate the message. What are the different ways we communicate it? Via song, via blog post, via article, video, whatever. So cultivate it, communicate it, and then connect that message and do it. I'm like, I think that works. I'm not sure if I'm missing a piece, but like cultivate, communicate, connect, and that sort of honors the three different roles and honors this like evolutionary process of bringing this message forward, bringing it into form, and then sharing that message to all the spaces. Yeah. So I'd love to, at this point, also go into a few more of those concepts of the book. So there are the three like laws or whatever that that I was trying to remember earlier. Besides there's the law of the few, the rule of stickiness, power of context. We'll go into those in a bit. The other three were contagiousness. So a social epidemic involves contagiousness. So again, the message has to be contagious. The other idea is that small causes can have big effects. So it's like if you drop like the pond in the water perfectly, like the ripples can go and touch everywhere. So like small causes can have big effects. And what was the other one? I just had them up here. Change happens not gradually, but at one dramatic moment. And so it's this idea that as we're cultivating this, it's like, it's not so much like this linear change of like, we're moving towards it. It's like spread, and then all of a sudden we're in an epidemic. All of a sudden we're living in a new narrative. So we crafted the messages spreading, and then all of a sudden it goes from being in the spread to being present, and like we are living in a new narrative on Earth. So those are three important concepts within this. Again, we just talked about law of the few, Maven, connector, salesperson, which is now like sort of curator, cultivation, connector, connection, communicator, educator, facilitator. I'm really enjoying how we're birthing new words, which helps to clarify this context more. And then the next one is rule of stickiness, which I was going into a little bit earlier, which is that a message has to stick. So again, that's like sort of what we were going at with the communicators, the musicians, the authors, the video makers, all of that are able to tap into that rule of stickiness and craft a message that sticks. Like take that message, the essence of it, bring it into form such that it sticks, such that all of a sudden everybody is just singing the song that's embedded within the new narrative within it. So stickiness plays in big in there in terms of communicating the message I feel. And then the power of context, I think, goes right back to the Maven is like super important with the context of like understanding what the context is. Maybe, I think all of them are really important, but understanding the context and how the context can shape the way the message spreads. Like right now, the context of the world is really unique, unlike we've seen it in a while because of this global pandemic, because all of a sudden everybody is in their houses and people all over the world are experiencing the same thing, which means they're experiencing the dangers, the fear around dying, around pandemic, and everybody in the world is experiencing like being in a house, and a lot of people are perceiving that in terms of like being repressed by the government. And so there's a lot of shared context in the world, which puts us in a really unique space to share a message. So yeah, just to tie those in, that contagiousness, small causes big effects, change happens not at once but in one dramatic moment, and then really tying in that law of the few that we've been going over, that rule of stickiness, and that power of context to ground that context in further. And if anybody has anything from that space. I'd love to, I'd love to explore where we might go from this, because I think that sort of helped set that context, and we've been in this exploration of the different roles. Maybe I could re-presence that curating, cultivating, communicating, connecting thing, if that metaphor that I was sort of proposing, if that feels resonant, if that feels like something we can move forward with. Because I think if we clarify our terms, and we don't need to lock them into place, but if we clarify sort of what we're speaking about, maybe that'll help set clearer context for deciding how we want to move forward with it and what the tangible steps are in that.
I really enjoyed the term reflector for a salesperson. I feel that hits it really nicely. Someone who's able to reflect the message back so that it feels as if it's originating from whoever they're trying to make a sale with. Maven, the only word that's come up that I really feel great about and hasn't been introduced yet, but is like literally encyclopedia, like some kind of who has all the information. And I feel there's a difference between one who identifies as like, oh, I could be a Maven, I have a lot of, like, I know a lot of stuff, versus someone who identifies as an encyclopedia, they know a lot of stuff. And so that feels very alive within me. And I like the word connector. I think the word connector is really beautiful. And I think that's been presence. And also another thing that came up too is the reflector, I feel, is a really powerful way to determine stickiness, or to really draw out that stickiness. And I'm not sure if the term reflector is great to bring in that analogy of the stickiness, but I feel like the stickiness factor really comes alive when you get it to, like, the Maven somewhat, but it just really comes alive when you get it to that reflector salesperson.
Okay. This is inspiring me to share here. I feel very grateful that you've spoken into these aspects of.
Before you start, can you maybe move a little closer to the mic? We can mostly hear you, but
hold on, sorry. That'll work. Can you hear me now? Yeah, cool. So I feel that what you're saying really, really speaks into this calling aspect. It's like, this is how we're called to show up in the container, that is unique. Like someone else hears a different call. Like if a bird, like a red bird, is putting out the song, the red bird's gonna be like, oh fuck yeah, I resonate with that. But then the bluebirds gonna be like, nope, that's not really for me. But then when they hear the bluebirds call, they're like, oh shit, that's my thing. And one of the big problems in our culture right now is that people are tuning into all the songs, and it's like flooding their sensors. They don't know which song to listen to, which song to follow, which song to bring out from their hearts, because there's so much noise. And this is an invitation to just like tune in. Like, what is your song? Where do you resonate? Who are you? And that's how we find our tribe. That's how we find our people. That's how I find all of you. So thanks. And I want to tap into there with Superpower of Mind in terms of the Maven archetype, and a little bit of the Connector archetype as well, is the role of the mycelium. Yes, I'm talking about the mushrooms because I love mushrooms. And what the mycelium do is they act like the internet of the plant world. They are the encyclopedia of the plant kingdom or queendom. And all of the knowledge and wisdom of each tree, of the elder trees, is stored in the roots of those trees. And those roots are connected via the mycelium to all of the other roots. So it creates this really distributed network of information. And it's the mushroom's job to find all of the trees that it can, to bring it all together into one bucket of knowledge. And I feel like that's why I'm here. So thank you for speaking into that. And for, like, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh shit, that's what I'm supposed to do. All this other stuff doesn't matter. Just do that. Like, okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to surrender into my gifts and completely let go of all the stuff that I suck at, so I can just lean into the reason of being. Aho.
Can you all hear me okay? All right. I really like what you said, Robert. I couldn't agree even anymore. And I'm really interested in discussing more about this, because the more we know ourselves and what we can contribute, what do we really want to contribute? What are our passions? What have we been holding inside so long that we just want to get out? And so really like taking some time to figure that out, and we do that. So yeah, I think like when we really dive into ourselves and then like how we contribute, and then we start to put all the pieces together and organize and see how it will flow. So awesome.
I'm feeling a desire to steer the conversation more towards the message. What are the things that we could be starting to investigate as the fundamentals or the foundation of a new narrative? I've presenced a couple, honoring all life. One that I really love is releasing the need to be right. And truth is inclusive. So each one of those have their own like fractal effects on what they do to the human mind and the way that our minds work, and then therefore the way that the world is structured. So are there any other core commonalities that those here in this conversation see that everybody would accept as something that they have in common that maybe they don't readily identify, that they do have in common with all beings?
Well, we are all alive. That's a big thing we all have in common, is that we're all alive here. So
We're all from Earth.
well, at least we're all on Earth. Yeah. A lot of people, like again, inclusivity. A lot of people would be turned off and excluded by saying they come from Earth, because a lot of people have beliefs that they come from other places, and we're not here to say those beliefs are right or wrong, but to find the message that can include people.
if I can rephrase that, when I use the word from there, I'm not saying like I actually come from this planet. I don't. I come from the stars, but I am made from this soil. I'm made from the plants. I'm made from the fungi, and that's the essence of that code that I want to bring through. And it's unifying in that we are all indigenous to this planet because we are all children of Mother Earth and Father Sky.
I align and resonate with a lot of what you're saying, but a lot of it is also belief that will lead people to feel excluded from this message.
Or
Proceed.
just changing it to of Earth would do that. Go ahead.
Yes, but it's already on all my social media channels.
I just wanted to add that we're all breathing.
We're all going through this Corona experience together.
Yeah, I'm really appreciating where you brought it with this part of the conversation. I think the common ground is really important. I wonder if it would feel disruptive for me to hop back. Like I still had one thing that we were saying on the last topic. It feels like it's relevant.
Totally. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, because it's like still looking at this flow of information, because it's like, okay, right now we're sitting here talking about the message and then understanding how that message spreads. And I don't think we've yet found cohesion of understanding how that message spreads. I was saying some stuff earlier and reflecting a little deeper and seeing that speaking like all the musicians as like the communicator sales people. I'm not sure if that's totally the most accurate way of saying it. I think they may fit better into the connectors, social influencers space, because they have a big reach. And so then perhaps the salespeople are the ones who go to people like Nako and be like, hey, here's the message, and I'm gonna help you understand why this is the message. And now you have the message, now you go and share that in whatever way you share it. And so it's this flow of information where there's the core of the information. There's like this Maven core where all of the information is here, and like we are being sourced straight from this core. And then being sourced from this core of information, we are communicating that message, that core, communicating that to all of our connectors. We're communicating that to all of the social influencers who are able to take this message and spread it wider than ever.
I think it's really it's important to know what the message is in order to know how to spread it, because different messages, you have different ways. So really knowing like what is that. So really back to the common ground, I think is important. And also just what do we want? What do we desire? What are what is it?
Yeah, and what I was looking to understand here is understanding the flow of information, so that when that message is clarified, because I think that's where we're moving into next, is what is that message? And so I'm just wanting to see if we can find cohesion on understanding that flow of information, how that information flows from source out to all the people. And then once it flows, then we can be like, cool, so what is that message? And I'm not necessarily saying a lot of messages, I'm saying like one message that is truly unified, like people like Jesus were here, and it's like, I am the way, the truth, the life. Like what he was saying is he is the embodiment of that message. He was that message. And so I think what we're doing is finding what is that message that is that realized self, whatever word we're putting on it, understanding what that is and coming back to the source of that and then spreading it. And so what I'm looking to find cohesion on in this space is, from that source, how does the message spread? How does that contagion reach? Michael.
Yeah, what you were saying just a minute ago really made it click for me. The salespeople going out to the connectors, as in I hadn't been fully seeing that there are a lot of connectors out there in the world who are like really deeply connected, that we're not tapped into at this point. So finding the connectors that we are tapped into and then getting them connected with our salespeople, or I keep on defaulting on the tipping point metaphors, but
Yeah, convincer just came up, but I love that of this. The salespeople are really the ones who have the message received from the Maven and can translate it. The translators, that's another way too, can translate it to all of those really big time influencer connector type people. And then also the salesperson has enough connection with the Maven, with the source of the message, that they will make sure that it is really clear. And maybe even the Maven can be brought into that conversation. But what I've tend to like see, and the belief I have around Mavens is that they're so focused on just the information. Sometimes it doesn't come out in a way that can fully be translated, at least not to everybody. And so, yeah, thank you for presencing that though. Of like the salespeople are the ones who talk to the connectors before it gets blasted off. Like that was something that I was kind of missing in adapting this to a new paradigm.
Yeah, amazing. And I think part of it is like understanding how does infection work. Like right now we're understanding how infection works. It's not like through a bunch of effort of trying to do it. It's just like casual context. Like all of a sudden there's somebody who has coronavirus, and then all of a sudden they're just interacting with people, and then you have more people who have it, and then they're interacting with people, and then you have some more people who have it. And so we see it like that. It's like here's our Maven, our source of information, which like we find and we come to know as we come together and really look to understand. Then we connect to this information, and now we are all the salespeople who are understanding that information, understanding that message, and going and doing what we're doing, and just casually living that message and sharing that message and connecting. As we do so, we connect to connectors. We connect to our friends like Tubby Love, Amber Lily. We connect, then like some of us connect like to Nako, to Tubby, to other authors, actors. Like I default to musicians, but there's so many different connectors. And in doing so, as we really blossom in our communication and our ability to communicate effectively, then because we've connected to this source of information, because we've come to understand the message together, as we go, we know how to communicate that effectively, and it just comes through casual contact, casual communication, and that message is able to spread and reach all these people who are bigger connectors, who all of a sudden now are infected with this message, and now all of a sudden it's in their songs, in their movies, in their everything, and it keeps spreading. And so I notice the tendency a lot of us can have of trying, and myself as well, of trying to do a lot, trying to exert a lot of effort. And I think what this like metaphor, this book especially really teaches us, is it's not so much about effort. It's like a really like casual contact unfolding that comes because of how connected we all are, and because of that stickiness of that original source message. Melissa.
You know, this just keeps coming up for me, and I would really like to share it. You know, I've always been really interested in how things work, and this conversation, there's almost not a reference point for it, and I just want to share this. So when I lived in Austin, and there was this new conversation about transgender in the restrooms, and it was like, can you hear me okay? And it was overnight, and I am not kidding, it felt just like how, and like your hands, Aaron, are just like, it just happened overnight. All of the cafes, all of the bars, all the restaurants had a unisex bathroom, and I've never really understood how things could go bam until this conversation right now. But what happens for me is there's a little bit of a, I say block, I'm not sure what it is, but you know, I feel like the government has such an agenda that they are using these same tools, but almost in the for their own agenda. And so I guess there's just an interesting feeling that I have, is that this would be using these tools that perhaps are the same tools as what other people, when they have an agenda. I guess it all just depends on what the agenda is. Thanks.
And I think that agenda is the message, is the virus. And so from coming together to understand as that Maven energy,
the message emerges, the virus emerges, and then we all are infected with the virus, and we get to go share that virus. And in sharing that virus all of a sudden reaches connectors, like influencers who have a lot of things. We don't even need to identify them. We're just going and living our lives infected with that virus, and then it reaches these people who are huge connectors, and now that virus is reaching billions of people.
It's just a little bit blowing my mind, and I'm grateful.
Good stuff. We're about an hour and 20 minutes in, and I'm feeling really good with where we've just gotten to. I feel like we just got to a really good point. I'm wondering what a nice, if anybody has a clear direction, like Michael, I'm seeing some deep thought from you. I'm wondering if there's anything that you're really wanting to present at this point.
That was in reference to the chat. Someone, Lisa, was requesting to pull someone in. Since we're nearing an integration point, I'm not sure if that would be the most appropriate, but I would love to have them invited to the next conversation, if that feels good. And then to address AG's presencing, I am feeling very clear now on the roles that would be required, and I'm loving that there's more coherence on what this metaphor is and how it can apply to a new paradigm. I like the thought and concept of like owning the metaphor too, by changing up the language so it fits more closely to what we're doing, and maybe even fits the languaging fits the new narrative that we're trying to form. I think that would be a good thing to present that just came up, but I don't see sales as being so much as a part of a new narrative. And so I'm rephrasing and rekeying those words. It does feel very important too. And how we are going to go about that where everyone can see it is still not totally clear for me, but yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do we feel aligned with making that shift from calling it a salesperson to calling it the communicator, in that we are all the ones who, as we come together in that clear message, we communicate it, and that is sort of like the beginning of the spread. So does that feel like a clear shift that we all feel aligned with, calling that salesperson now the communicator? Thumbs up. Good things. Super cool. So that's a powerful shift we've just made. Communicator and connector being those two main ones, and then the Maven being this source of information that really means all of us coming together, looking to understand, getting clear on what that message is, and then communicating that message. So I don't know if we've gotten a clear one for Maven. For now, I think the word Maven or information hub is definitely fun and fine, but cultivating, curating are all resonant. I don't know if we need to have a new word for that yet. I feel really good that we've made the shift from salesperson to communicator for one.
The term Maven is derived from market Maven, so it also has like a capitalist undertone. If it's a Yiddish word, but yeah.
I don't know how you might feel about this as an alternate concept for Maven. And I apologize because I haven't read the book. Erica read the book and I just joined because, I say yes. So I'm doing my best to play catch up by just like being present and listening to everyone. But listening to you describe it, and Robert, especially your explanation of it, like makes sense to me. And what I'm reminded of is the Pleiadian mother teacher, right? That Cryon describes. And the Pleiadian mother teacher teaches, it's like a wheel, and all spokes of the wheel lead to the hub. And so when I'm listening to you guys describe this, I'm thinking like, well, that role is the hub, right? Like it's the source of all the teaching, right? And so like, it seems like maybe if everyone's in alignment with that, that might be a better way to describe it.
Cool. I'm aligned with hub. Yeah. Hub. So hub, communicators, connectors. I'm aligned with those three terms. Yeah, hub's really good. And information hub is a way that we've already been referring to it. So cool. So do we have alignment that as we right now, that the evolving context of these conversations in the tipping point metaphor is utilizing these three words to refer to these three primary roles, which is hub, communicator, and connector? Cool. Looks like we have alignment in that. Awesome. Cool. So that's a major takeaway. That's epic that we've done that. Creating new wording, new metaphor that expresses these same concepts, but now is evolving. And again, these can always change. We can always come back in a future conversation and realize that there's a word that better communicates it, but it's nice to have these words right now. Robert.
If I may, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to do that, to actually create the new words, because that's part of the new paradigm is new ways of communicating. We don't have to rely on the old systems, but they do provide the context for us to then create something based on the framework. It's like, as the pillars are coming down, we can then look at the pillar and be like, okay, well, this part's good, this part sucks. So let's take this part and then add it to this new part over here and then make something that actually does speak to what's really happening. And yeah, just an invitation.
I'm bringing a question to, we shifted salesperson to communicator, and I was like on it. I'm questioning that because the connectors are also doing a lot of communicating, because the like from the hub, we're also doing a lot of communication. And so I'm wondering if there is a better word than
Translator is still the strongest word I've heard.
Translator feels cool. Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Yeah, I can be good with translate. That means it's like, cool, we got the message. We can go and speak in a lot of different languages. Cool.
That feels true.
So the hub is our source of information, the source of our message. And then from that, we translate that message so that we take it from like that raw information, that raw message, to translate it into something that is a lot more like cool and contagious and sticky and people really, really vibe with. And as we translate it, we bring it to the connectors, who are the people who are very popular, know a lot of people. And so now we've translated that message into something that's very cool, very popular, very contagious, sticky. And now the connectors take that new message that's been translated into that and are able to take that and blast it into their spheres, because they have those connections and because now the message has been translated into something that really is cool, popular. Yes. Cool. Cool. So we've gotten new verbiage: hub, translator, connector. I like that we're still honoring the book, and we still are reusing one of those terms because connector is such a good word. Are there any points in this that don't feel clear that we can clarify? Or is there another area that we should begin to move into? Or do we want to start moving into completion? We're at about an hour and a half. Typically, these are 90 minutes to 2 hours. So I'm cool with doing another 30 minutes if we still feel like there's a lot of good stuff.
If I may presence a curiosity, it's in terms of the Corona conversation starting within the context of, hey, there's a pandemic, quarantine, let's talk about it, to now being a safe place for us to come together and communicate on whatever's coming up. And feels like it's transitioning towards this movement that we're building that is contagious, and that it gives people this opportunity for their emergent leadership to show up in the moment. And this concept into the tipping point being not entirely focused, but generally focused on, businesses, startups, and things like that, where it's when your movement is sort of like underlying monetary aspect, or like it's integrated into economics. And with that, there's a product or service that comes along with it that is sort of the aspect of the movement that people are joining in order to receive. So I'm curious if that's a framework that we want to adopt here, or if it's still this sort of like free flowing, free space of communication without much direction or movement in that direction.
Could you just rephrase that last bit? I want to really make sure I follow what you just said.
Backtracking. What's the, because it's the tipping point, what is the point that we're tipping over? And yeah, that's it.
Okay. So yeah, beautiful place to tie it in. So to me, the tipping point is the tipping point at which humanity is now living in a new narrative. So the message is a new narrative for humanity, where the old narrative has been man has dominion over nature. The new narrative is placing value in the web of life. So there's a new narrative, and the tipping point is when humanity is now living in that new narrative. And that message is the new narrative. And we sort of come into that hub space and receive the full clarity, the full download of that narrative of what it means to place value in the web of life, or whatever that core of that message is. And we get to the core of that message and receive that information, that message from that. We are now going and spreading that. We're all connectors. We're all connectors already. And because of that, we are going and spreading that message. And it's already a really beautiful message. And that message is one that a lot of people who we're connected to are going to align right away with. And so, yes, new narrative. We're going to speak it to people, and people are going to be like, yeah, I dig it. But then there's going to be people who don't get it. There's going to be people who don't understand what that means. And so that's where the translators come in. And the translators are like going around and saying, hey, here's what that means. Here's what that means. So that your average, everyday, regular Joe can be able to receive this message of this new narrative and translate it so that they can understand what all these cool kids who are vibing with this new narrative, it's like, what are they on about? I don't get that. And so the translators are here to make sure that they can understand that as well. And so we're getting that information from the hub, we're connecting, we're spreading it, we're translating it, more and more people connect, and it spreads and it ripples throughout all of humanity. And as it becomes more and more contagious, sticks more and more, this becomes the new predominant narrative until we reach that tipping point in which the new narrative is the predominant narrative. I don't like that word predominant. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but is the narrative that is prevalent throughout society. And that is the narrative that we are now living in within humanity, is a new narrative that places the value back in the web of life. And so the tipping point is when we hit that point where we as a humanity are collectively living in a new narrative. That's my understanding of it.
It feels true. And I am really excited to explore what that narrative is, because it feels like it's something that we are all writing together through the process of becoming ourselves and being ourselves, not necessarily doing anything. And that feels like a paradigm shift in the old way, which is very much, what are you doing? What physical changes, what physical value are you bringing? And bringing it more into the existential value of presence.
And you cannot become that which you already are. So you already are yourself.
Yeah, there you go. You can become less of who you are not,
You can
perhaps.
become all kinds of things, but we already are who we are. We're just being it. We're just being it. But I love the points you're presencing. So yeah, we're now looking to understand what is that new narrative. We've sort of come to a place where we're understanding how the narrative spreads, how we are operating as hubs, connectors, translators, how we are moving as that, and how the narrative spreads. And so now I hear the question of, what is the narrative? What is that core message? Which is what Michael was getting to a little bit earlier. What is the narrative? What is the message that we really tune into when we come to this center, when we come to this hub? What is that message that then unfolds and ripples and contagiously throughout all humanity? So I think that's the question that we are now at in this exploration.
That brings me a lot of questions coming up next. Many different questions that I've been having for a while, like what is that narrative? And some of the questions that popped up are, who are we? What do we value? What do we want? What is most important? What is morally right? What is this narrative? So I'm really excited to answer those questions.
Yeah, and it's like asking these deep questions. It's like, if we have the common ground that we're all alive, then we can ask the question, what does it mean to be alive? And now we can be in that understanding and then do that. So we sort of can find our common ground, and from that allow that understanding to emerge and to unfold. And so I think common ground is sort of where a lot of that inquiry could begin. And yes, the inquiry can also bring us to understand that common ground, 100%.
Well, common ground as in, like, what are we all in right now? Or because we're talking about what is the new narrative, or as in, like, what do you, I don't know, what do you mean? Like, exactly.
A new narrative will be based in actuality. And so we can look to really, what is the actuality of all of this? And so the old narrative to me is not necessarily common ground. It's sort of a false story that we've been being told for a long time, but that's not really the truth of it, as I would say. And so looking to what is actually our common ground.
So what is our common ground as in, what do we want? What do we value? What do we,
perhaps
what do we,
if you look at that, it has to be something that can apply to all of humanity. We can't just necessarily, I mean, if you and I are looking to have a conversation, we could find some common ground of like, okay, what are some of the shared values that we share? And we can use that as a way to move into a deeper space of connection, because we've got that common ground, which is establish that connection. And so what I'm looking at here is, if you and I can do that as two individuals, how can we do that in such a way that we include the whole of humanity? And
I'm wondering, like, what's a different way to ask that? Because I mean, I get what you're saying, but like, when I say that, I think globally, I think everyone, I think the world. So
Yeah, perfect. Because you were saying like, what do we want? It's like we could probably agree that the whole of humanity wants peace. We all want peace, and that creates a common ground for all of us because it's like cool. We all want peace. Even the people who are like creating a bunch of war, they still want peace, just in a selfish way. They want peace for themselves and not for anybody else. But at some level, we all want peace, and that can give us a common ground. And and we are all alive, and that gives us another common ground. So the desire to have peace and the being alive and valuing life, like are things that can be really solid common ground that can be really there, I think, at the core of this message, of this narrative. Even just like acknowledging the possibility of peace can be a part of the narrative. Like acknowledging that this narrative, like in this narrative, we really acknowledge that peace is possible.
yeah, and I'm hearing that's a like a desire, that's a want, something that we want, and so I really like to take it deeper. Well, I guess like we could, next conversation, I want to talk about that. I want to open it up to even deeper, like connecting it to ourselves, like, and then what we value, what do we think is morally right for the world or everyone, or the planet, all beings, sharing that information and then coming to the common ground. By sharing it all, we might have new ideas or new desires, or I never thought, like, yeah, we can have all these, we can have organic food. And so by sharing our desires, our wants, our goals, I think we can find more common ground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I definitely, love seeing that, like the exploration of what is possible. I think and I think we can see it as like desires, like what do we want? And I also really feel exploring what is possible can create a nice sense of inclusion within this as well. So yeah, things like that. Where might we want to move to as humanity? What do we acknowledge as a possibility? Like understanding that it's possible to have peace, that it's possible for us to live in harmony with the earth, that it's possible for us to really grow our own food and be sustainable and regenerative and things like that. I think can definitely be included in that. Understanding morality, ethics, the ways we relate with one another, the ways we treat one another. Like Christ said, love thy neighbor as thyself. And so sort of bringing some of that, because all of these are really timeless messages that we can incorporate. They come back to how we are living in relation with life, with ourselves, with our neighbors, with one another, with this whole thing, and bringing that in there at that core of that message, and finding that common ground that can really connect us and can be something that can include people and can actually spread.
So my mind has been kind of rolling around this one thought. There are a lot of amazing individuals out there who are sharing these beautiful positive messages. And what I keep thinking of is, like, what is Trevor Hall missing? Like, why has his message of love not permeated the whole planet? What is he missing? What is missing from all these other messages that is so deeply important? And I keep coming back down to speaking on not so much on desire or wants or even what is possible, but what is, because there's such a foundational disconnect on what is in the world. So many people operate on beliefs saying this is the way the world is, but that is the way that their mind has structured the world. So the reality check here is not going, for me, and what I'm seeing is like what is missing is acknowledging what is as the foundation of a message. Because as soon as you start pulling in like, well, I want world peace or I want this, it's getting into the mind and not coming from what is, like from a state of being.
Really golden. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's going to be core of a lot of it. And like I see how Nako is painting a very visionary future. I see how Trevor is coming from a Bhakti belief system. Like he's pure heart of Bhakti, and I love him for that. And Trevor's like, and Nako's like epic visionary, and I love him for that. But neither of them are fully inclusive because they're not purely relating to what is.
I'm glad that you mentioned Nako because I was thinking of him too, because in a way I feel he is sharing what is, like in some of his songs. So he's telling you, he's like, sharing what's going on in his life at least. But yeah, I really see it as important to relate to what is now, because we've been living it and now we have to take a pause and slowly connecting to what past story was, and then starts to shift that into, well, you know, if we could change the story, if we could change the narrative, how would that look? Would we be doing the same things? Would it be a little different? Or if we want to add in different things, what would we have to change in the paradigm? So I like what is first.
Yeah, and I think most of these artists are relating with what is because we can't really get away from what is. But for a lot of them, there's like for Nako, it's like I think you said it's like he's sharing his beliefs, and so for a lot of the musicians, their music ends up being a platform for preaching, and there's been some usefulness in that, and a lot of people have received a lot of good medicine from that. But I think what's going to need to happen for that message to be truly potent is for the understanding that this is, yeah, some kind of understanding of really being with what is and relating to that, and not utilizing these expressions as a way to project our beliefs out onto the world.
This is something that's really alive for me in this concept of what is belief and what is understanding, what is knowing. And I'm still working on it. And I'm going to be honest with that. And it's really hard because I don't want to fall as an individual or as part of this collective into the preaching way of like, this is the path, you know, and this is what we do. It works for us and work for you too type of mentality. And, uh, you know, speak to the peak of the mountain that is possible, and, you know, suggest that, you know, this is the way that we're going. Here's how it's working for us, not as a direct sales pitch like join you'll get to, more just an invitation like, if you want to be a, you know, help us, you know, get together, then your gifts are welcome. It's even like that feels tied to a belief, and I'm not sure how this narrative functions without belief, but I do trust that there is a way for it to work without belief.
Mhm. There's I don't think it really takes belief for me to understand that I'm here living and breathing, because it's like something I'm experiencing in the moment. It's not like me attaching onto a past idea of me having breathed and lived. It's like in this moment, I am living and breathing and I am directly experiencing it. So it's like a very present knowing. And so I think the narrative is stuff that's like not something we have to really create some big concept and try and like help people understand, like, can't you see that you're living? It's like the narrative is one that's just like so obvious and clear. All we have to do is just like look around and be like, oh, yeah, okay, this is the actuality. Here we are sharing this moment. Here I am breathing, here I am alive. There you are alive. And pointing to things that are so obvious and so clear, and yet we don't often talk about in the day-to-day. And I think in that we're able to shift away from a narrative that's based on a lot of beliefs, and we're able to move into a narrative that's really based in understanding and based in actuality.
Feel like a common ground could be a belief too, but when sovereignty comes to mind, like right now we're all here together and we're talking about like what roles do we play, what do we connect with, and how can we help, and instead of talking, I feel like that's the common thing, like we have our own sovereignty, our own freedom, and what does that look like? That would be like more to discover.
So we are coming up on the 2-hour mark. Are there things that people really want to, is there anything that feels really present and alive that people really want to presence in the discussion? Or do we feel pretty good about really starting to wrap it up? Cool. Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. I'm really grateful for the work we've done on really curating this metaphor, that the hub, the connectors, the translators. I'm really grateful for the way we've been able to in this call understand that flow, understand how that information flows, how that virus spreads, and look at the sort of the ease of it and how it doesn't require a lot of effort, but through coming together in this way and understanding this way, that we are able to have this epidemic effect. And I feel like we've gotten to a lot there. And I feel like we also were able to communicate and come together a lot on this new narrative and on this emerging narrative, emerging paradigm, and sort of understand how it can emerge in a way that is inclusive. And I think that's where a lot of the work is going to continue to be, is continuing to cultivate this message and come into a lot of clarity. And I see a lot of work being able to be done in future, both offline as well as in future calls here, of continuing to bring that forward. But yeah, I'm super grateful. I feel like this has been a really productive and effective gathering, and I think it's really given us a lot of forward motion in terms of working with this tipping point metaphor and cultivating a lot of clarity and cohesion that's going to support us moving towards that tipping point for humanity even quicker. So yeah, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for contributing, offering your pieces to all of it. And I look forward to us carrying the conversation forward from here. And if anybody has any more sign-offs, feel free to say your alohas, all the things.
Thank you all. I really appreciate your kind words, your exquisite energy, and showing up. You could have literally been anywhere in the multiverse of the internet, not actually physically going anywhere. You could be outside, Michael, and see that you're doing both, and I honor you for that. And thank you for saying yes to this process that we've begun of merging our consciousnesses together into a unified being. Ahu Mitakoye Oyasin. Life is fun.
Mm-hmm. By the way, that thing you did right there you might have hopped into preaching just for your awareness. You might have hopped into it for a second.
Sorry, what did I happen to?
You might have hopped into a preacher mode for just a moment there with your last statement. It's hard to
The
avoid.
gratitude or the
Claiming that all of our consciousnesses are merging into a unified being. Might have been your belief being
is
preached
that
out.
an observation or a belief? I can't tell.
That's my perception. I could be totally wrong.
Oh.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm willing to be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Oh, good. Well, we're making really good progress and continuing to learn to communicate honestly. And I think that's what's going to keep us moving forward in a really good way. So I'm grateful for
Hush,
it.
hush.
Mhm.
Thank you all. I love you.
Love you.
Thank you guys. It's always nice chatting with you, and really excited to continue.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you all.